Excellent. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to the Dome Dialogues e-conferences. We're at number 12 today, and pushing forward through that. So we've got a nice packed schedule today, primarily focusing on sort of best practices in social media. So we have a few case studies, and we wouldn't necessarily call them panelists, but just people who've done really well in social media as of late, and sort of picking their brains and seeing what works and what doesn't, hearing from all of you, since almost all of our content delivery as of late has been through online means. So whether it's something as ubiquitous as Facebook, or if some of you have kind of gone off the beaten path and tried Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, we'll talk about, if you have no idea what TikTok is, we'll talk about that this afternoon. And then afterwards, we'll have a few of our recurring segments. Long German Words of the Week with Anna Green, of course, is back. We have a brand new segment this week. We get to introduce Geoff Holt. So now we have two Holts back to back in the middle. Geoff is going to be introducing Astronomy Apps for your at-home audiences, and kind of going through that each week. We have our podcasts with Mary Holt, and then we didn't know until this morning whether or not we were going to be able to have him, but Mike Smail will be joining us again for another episode of The Record Shop, and then we'll open it up to open forum there at the end of the presentation. But just so that we've got the announcements and schedule out of the way, we have the e-conference today. There's a special session tomorrow night at 7, which is going to focus primarily on building a home studio. So how to get your little nook at home to do as much work for you as possible. So we'll talk about green screens and ring lights, and how to differentiate between different types of cameras and what you need and what you don't need. And you can spend $3,000 to do this. You can spend $30,000 to do this. You can spend $30 to do this. And we'll talk about all of the different ways that as we have sort of less and less clarity about the way things are going, we're going to continue to have a lot of content creation. And so this will be something that will be useful for both at home and in the dome, so that you've got an idea of what's out there, what's available, sort of demystify some of the terminology and the vocabulary, so that we kind of have this level foundation to work from, so that as you move forward, instead of it just being, I use Zoom and Stellarium and OBS, it's, all right, I know what kind of cameras I have available. I know how I can use green screens and things like that. So we'll have that tomorrow night. Hospitality Suite is 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Pacific tomorrow night. Mark, what's on our schedule for the Hospitality Suite?
Okay, tomorrow night's Hospitality Suite is the return of trivia hosted by Aaron Steinert. We're going to be doing another round of general knowledge trivia, although it may lean slightly toward the scientific, but it is not an astronomy trivia quiz. We figured that would be a little less entertaining than if it were a general knowledge one. So yeah, please drop by tomorrow at 8 o'clock Central, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, and we can all spend an hour or so quizzing each other on what's up.
Fix that.
That's not me.
No, we're good. And then finally on Friday, we're devoting the entire e-conference session to a reopening roundtable. So that okay, all right. Things have quieted down, I think. Okay, we're good for now. So Friday, we're devoting the entire e-conference session to our reopening roundtable. So it's for everyone, to educate everyone else kind of what your plans are. For those of you who might have actually begun the reopening process already, what that looks like for you. and more importantly, looking at this not just in the how do we separate people and deal with 20 or 25% capacities, but more of what's it going to look like to continue online content creation while we have people in the domes, and what does it look like to do outreaches, and what does it look like to do field trips? What does it look like when we're faced in some institutions with waves 2 or 3 of layoffs or furloughs, sort of the hard realities of what that's going to look like in the coming months and years. So come prepared with all of that. I know that Patty Seaton's going to be helping us. We're going to be compiling a document throughout the session, and then once that's done, we'll edit it out and send it out to everybody so that it's available for the community. So just kind of keep that in mind as we we did in fact boot that person until they can figure out how to operate their Zoom. And then Michelle, we will be YouTubing all of the sessions. So the session tomorrow night, as well as the 2 Ever conferences, will be on the YouTube page. And so with that, we'll move into our first segment today, which is looking at social media best practices. And so there were 3 individuals in particular that I sort of wanted to pinpoint today. The catalyst for this was a conversation that I had with Dan Tell about sort of the amount of social media that people thought was appropriate. Like if you spend 30 minutes trying to do a show or presentation versus doing something that might be 90 seconds or 2 minutes, and how audience capture and things like that works. And so if you're dealing with a Facebook group or something that's on Twitter or something that's on Instagram, for example, how all of those different platforms require different marketing avenues, different ways of approaching them. We've got Paulette Epstein from the Michigan Science Center. Their Echo Live daily online outreach is actually going to be on NBC Nightly News either tonight or tomorrow as one of the premier programs in the country. So we're going to have Paulette talk about that and their crew. And then, a guy near and dear to my heart, Derek Demeter's in the conference today. Derek, of course, and I had been doing a lot of online stuff for many, many years. And Derek, of course, was one of the first to kind of jump on that bandwagon, virtual star parties and live shows. And so get a little bit of feedback from him as to how things are going from the Facebook side. And then, of course, throughout this, as much conversation as we can. Feel free to interject at any time on sort of what works for you, what you've been dealing with in terms of maybe your audience sizes, or what you find works really well, what you've tried that didn't work at all, and then come up with something where we have a few best practices by the end that we can all sort of work from. So I'm going to turn it over first to Dan, primarily because he does have a small child with him, so we want to maximize the amount of time. Hi, Maya. So we want to maximize the amount of time we've got him available and kind of help set the stage for a little bit of what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. So Dan, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So I think Morrison Planetarium. We're part of California Academy of Sciences, of course. California Academy of Sciences, by and large, runs their own social media page. We have a dedicated social media marketing team of about 2 people, which gets the job done for an institution of our size. But yeah, in addition, many departments at California Academy of Sciences run their own independent social media, and Morrison Planetarium is no exception of that. So we do have our own sub-social media page, Morrison Planetarium. You can find us if you look us up. But in the process of making this page work, basically, we've gotten a lot of tips from our own social media team on best practices that we have applied to our posts, and I want to share some of those with you. So just in general, one of the things to keep in mind is, well, first of all, where you're going to target and who you're targeting. Because obviously there's a lot of different social media apps out there, and you really have to think about who your audience is. And I think for most of us, we want to hit the same audiences that were coming to our planetariums before. So most likely families, families with children. And for the most part, Facebook is the platform you should probably focus your efforts on if you have the efforts to focus only on one social media platform. Just speaking, straight from statistics, Facebook, as of end of last year, had about 2.5 billion active users. That's not just users, period, but that's people who are, have been on Facebook within the last week or so. So Facebook is the place to target the most. The second most active social media platform after that is YouTube, with about 2 billion worldwide users. So Facebook and YouTube streaming are the two things that are going to get you the most bang for your buck. It's also going to especially help you target sort of the key audience I think that we want to hit, which is young parents with children. Really, I mean, young parents about, in their 20s, 30s, all the way up through grandparents. Everyone's on Facebook. So like, I think that's going to be one of your key social medias to target. The next most popular after Facebook and YouTube social media site that's probably worth focusing on at all is Instagram. Instagram has about 1 billion global users. And what's really nice about Instagram is you can't do the same sort of in-depth live streams that you can do with Facebook and YouTube. Sorry, that's Maya there. But one thing that has been very popular on Instagram, and especially is popular with people younger than me, I mean, I do a little bit of it, but yeah, so if you want to target young adults and teenagers, is Instagram stories. So Instagram stories basically were Instagram's competitive feature with Snapchat. So obviously Snapchat, sorry, I got the cat here too. Snapchat was obviously very, very popular with teens and young adults a few years ago, but has waned in popularity, especially as Instagram stories features has kind of supplanted what Snapchat used to do. What's also good about stories, and it really has been the main focus of our Academy social media, is stories let you also track the engagements with your social media as well, in a way that not all platforms do, because every single time someone views your story, you get a record of somebody viewed it. So it's a really great way to try out posts, see what works, see what people engage with, see what's popular. So I would say that would be the next thing that you should focus on. TikTok is like the next biggest growing thing. TikTok is for the kids. I don't understand TikTok. Someone else could probably speak to that better. And then I would point out, like, Twitter is obviously like one of the other big sites we think of in terms of social media. Twitter has less than 400 million active users. So even if you personally like Twitter, it's not where I would focus my social media advertising efforts. And then, with Facebook sort of as the primary, something to keep in mind, of course, is Facebook has an algorithm that sort of sorts how people see your posts. This algorithm is always changing, but it is not designed to work in your favor as an institution. It is designed to make you buy ads. So it's designed basically to not help you as someone who's trying to build your popularity. But a few things to keep in mind that you can use with the algorithm. Again, the details are always changing, but the gist is that in Facebook, you can like, comment, or share. And these have a different weight on how likely your post is to appear in other people's feeds. Likes are the least valuable. Comments are slightly more valuable than likes, and then shares are the most valuable for getting social media attention. And so making posts that have high shareability is the best way to get attention. And this is, of course, effectively what makes Facebook so toxic for misinformation, is sharing is what has the most value. But yeah, you want to focus on posts that can be easily shared. The counter side of this is creating a large volume of unpopular posts will decrease the value of your popular posts in terms of them appearing. So you want to try and target, basically, if you can only have the effort to focus on a few good posts, make a few good posts. Try to avoid making a high volume of unpopular posts, because that will tank your overall popularity of your page. So one of the most valuable things you can do is, if you're creating a post, trying to advertise something, have yourself and your own staff share the post. That's going to be the biggest thing that will increase the popularity. And then, of course, things that are shareable and of general public interest works well. Get people outside your institution to share. And then, of course, because comments are more valuable than likes, doing posts that have some way of engaging people, asking them a question, challenging them to figure out a fact, some sort of trivia, are the next thing you can get to get high engagements. And then, yeah, the other thing I would suggest thinking of is, of course, we are astronomy enthusiasts. We are more likely to sit down and watch a video about an astronomical topic than the average public. But this is a case where, as I always like to think of, I think some of the best advice in marketing always comes from the classic movie Joe Dirt with the advice, it's not what you want, it's the consumer. So think about what your audience wants to see. And keep in mind, your audience may like astronomy, may have an interest in astronomy, but they have interest in all kinds of different things. And you're competing for their attention with all those different things. So think about what you like to watch on social media that is not astronomy. Think about the length of video you're willing to sit through and engage with if it's not, our professional core of interest. And that's what we're trying to reach with other people. So we as planetarians might be willing to sit down and watch a 30-minute astronomy video. The average public, especially scrolling through social media, not so much. So think about like the kinds of videos you might watch. You are probably most likely to watch a video between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, because that's sort of the time you have to take out of your scrolling through social media to look at something that is not of like core central interest to you. So I would definitely suggest for recorded videos, try to keep them slightly shorter. And then for the Academy, for longer form content, we found that's most engaging if we do it live. And so we've focused longer form content on live presentations where people can interact with the presenter. Obviously, we've had a couple of posts about trolling on Dome Dialogues in the last week. And that's where I think moderation comes in most helpful. If you're going to do live programs, because live programs are the easiest way to do a long form program and get engagement, having an additional staff member who can moderate comments and interactions is going to be a key way to make that a pleasant experience for your staff and for other users. So those are my key tips for starting out.
Great, Dan. It's perfect. And then it's going to allow us to segue, when you're looking at sort of these pre-recorded things that are on the shorter end, the say 30 seconds to 2 minutes, versus facilities that may want to spend more time focusing on live content, maybe not an everyday sort of thing, but once or twice a week and sort of have a consistent schedule. So we're going to turn it over to Derek Demeter. Derek, down at Bueller Planetarium in Sanford, just north of Orlando, down in Florida. You guys have been presenting a virtual star party and a live public show each week at consistent time slots, so that people know that sort of this is the time to tune in. It's a little bit more consistent with what, say, your public schedule would have been if the facility was open. Can you briefly give us a little bit of update of how that's been working and sort of what you've seen has been a positive to that, and if there's been any sort of negatives or things you want to try in the future?
Yeah, so again, thank you for having me on, and I'm glad to see all of you here today. So basically, when this first started, we were actually in the process of actually doing Silent Sky, which for those that don't know is a play about Henrietta Swan Leavitt, Annie Jump Cannon, and several of the other Harvard computers during the late 1800s. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. So originally, we were thinking, can we do a live reading of that to kind of allow the students that were going to be actually performing in this play to continue to do it. Unfortunately, we didn't have the rights at the time to do that. So me and Justin Cirillo, who works with me at the planetarium, we decided to meet and we talked about the idea of doing these virtual programs. We have, one thing that both Mike and I can talk about is a lot of our planetarium shows are actually done on PowerPoint. That's one of our trade secrets. And utilizing our smaller dome, when we have a nice projector, very large format projector in our dome, it almost basically looks like it's full dome. So many of our shows have been formatted originally in PowerPoint with also the use of UniView and several other software, and Stellarium, of course, being one of them, and also a program called Space Engine, which is, if you haven't heard of Space Engine, you definitely want to look that up. It's really incredible, and maybe one day I'll do a tutorial on that if you're interested. But anyways, there are a lot of different resources out there for space programs, and so we decided to start doing virtual public shows. We're thinking, well, we average about 40 to 50 people a show at the planetarium. Again, we're a smaller planetarium. We're not as large as the museum type planetariums. So a 50-person view is all we were expecting. So we decided to do our first, we decided to go with a virtual star party first because my friend Frank Kane, who used to do stuff on YouTube, was really interested in doing some live stacking star party activities. So we met up with Frank, me and Justin on Zoom, and we decided to kind of do a mock up of this virtual star party utilizing his telescope equipment. And we decided, let's go ahead and do a Facebook Live of that. We met with our social media employees at the college and thought, Facebook would be our best because we have about 6,000 followers on Facebook. So we decided that would be our biggest reach. And what we would do then is we would record them and we would post them on YouTube, which in a way, YouTube is another social media outlet. Especially with a younger audience, more people watch YouTube than they do the TV. So you can actually do some pretty incredible things with YouTube as well. So if you kind of, as Dan mentioned, Facebook is probably your best target area because that does target the kind of demographics that you would want. But of course, with Zoom and other software, you can record it and then of course upload it to YouTube. So we decided to do that format. And we had about 2,000 views for our virtual star party. It was way, way, way over more than what we expected. We had a lot of engagement. And that's another thing about doing live program that we learned is to engage with your audience. I know there's been some debates on Dome Dialogues about doing live program versus unlive programming. But Justin moderates our chat window in Facebook. So he is pretty much on laser target mode to if anything pops up that is basically considered offensive. But engaging with your audience, asking them questions, having them do Q&A. People are just yearning right now for not just polished stuff. They're looking for a chance to just hang out and see something that's not related to the coronavirus. And that's something that we discovered is that we have now a following that enjoys seeing our virtual star parties every week now. And we're averaging now about 100 to 150 people watching the entire length of the event, which sometimes last week it went to 3 hours. We had 150 people still on for 3 hours watching these things. And the reason why is because we're engaging them. We're asking them, hey, what do you want to look at next? Leave a comment and chat. If you have a question, we can answer that for you. If you stick around in 10 minutes, we're going to go ahead and visit this thing. So come on back. And kind of almost like a talk show almost where you kind of lead people up to say, hey, don't leave yet. We're going to look at this instead. Or, hey, I'll answer your question in about a few minutes after we look at this thing to kind of keep people staying on. So engagement is very, very important for live programming. The one thing that we discovered, and Dan kind of touched on this as well, is that live programming like those star parties, which are very fluid, they're not basically scripted. It's more just, people just getting together, talking about the night sky, pointing the telescope at various objects in the sky. Of course, we have different themes. For example, last week we talked about variable stars. We had a variable star expert, Barbara Harris, join us, and she works with the AAVSO, and we looked at some of her ways you can do citizen science. So there is some structure, but a lot of it's just kind of, we're just chatting, we're looking at objects in the sky, we're going on cue. So that tends to work really well with our live events. For our virtual public shows, which are done usually Thursday nights, which is why I'm rarely at the hospitality suite, is because we usually do our virtual public shows on Thursday nights. These are kind of programs that we would have offered at the Planetarium. We've also noticed that there's a decent amount of people. Last week, we did our virtual public show with Jackie Bauman. I think she's in the audience here. We did it on astrology versus astronomy, and it was a lot of fun. And we did it more of kind of a tag team thing, of more of an interview type thing. So, for example, I would bring up definitions and I'd be like, hey, Jackie, let's go to Stellarium and let's take a look at some of these things that I mentioned. So it's more of a jump. Instead of it being just a scripted public show, it was more of like a talk show kind of thing. But again, there was a lot more script to it. So you can have fun with it. And I think people are not looking for polished stuff at the moment. We've discovered that people are just very appreciative of the fact that we're just creating this stuff and sharing with it and just giving them information that they can enjoy. So don't feel like you have to have everything exactly like you have in the Planetarian. It has to be polished, it has to be animated correctly, it has to be this and that. If you have a dog barking in the background, it kind of creates a human element to it. People laugh it off. They know what's going on in this world. So, don't feel too worried about, oh man, I don't know if I can start this star party, or I don't know if I could do a public show because I don't have all the resources. The resource is you. You are the communicator. You're the person that can come out and actually provide something resourceful to somebody. So don't feel too bad about, a lot of times we're just running PowerPoints or just some animations. There's also Google Earth, there's Stellarium, there's lots of free software, open space. So again, you can utilize a lot of technology there, and there's a lot of stuff available for you. So by doing these virtual star parties and virtual public shows that were done regularly every week, we have been able to develop a following with that. And I like to believe that quality is over quantity. So we've discovered that it's kind of leveled out now. We had a lot of views at the beginning because people were getting locked down. They were trying to figure out what's going on. But we're starting to kind of see it plateau a little bit and stay. But the people that are staying are really enjoying what we're doing. And they were like, we're excited about seeing the next episode next week. So again, look at the quality versus quantity number. Don't worry about the numbers as much. Worry about the people that are part of that. And if you influence one person in that audience, that you've done your job, right? You've been able to influence and inspire people, and that's what matters the most. So don't worry about, oh man, we have 20,000 views on this video or 2 views. You never know who those 2 views are. For example, the other day we did a program and the CEO of a major company in Orlando said that their child was in the field trip program with us. So again, you never know what you're doing or what you're presenting to. One of my lifelong friends have told me, perform like you're performing in front of royalty. You don't worry about who's watching it. Just produce content. Let that content flow, and you never know. So again, one of the things that we worry about too with social media is that how can we get this to go viral? How can we get this? Sometimes things go viral when you least expect it. So the most important thing we've done is basically, let's keep creating the content. Let's keep giving it to the people. Let's keep it consistent, which also is helpful. If you're consistent with your content, people will tune in. They'll be more engaging. We found that to be very, very helpful for us. So right now we're trying to work with, me and Justin are starting to work on doing pre-recorded stuff. And just like Dan mentioned, pre-recorded should be short and sweet, maybe one topic, and just publish that. You can use Facebook Premiere, by the way. Facebook has a Premiere app just like YouTube does, where you can actually you can create a pre-recorded video, and then you can go on Facebook Premiere and say, hey, we're going to premiere this at noon on Thursday. And then you can share that with your fellow fans. And that way there's something they can look forward to. So kind of draw up the attention to, hey, we're going to be releasing a new video this Thursday at noon. Check it out on Facebook Premiere or YouTube Premiere. There's also that as well. You can also do YouTube Premiere. That tends to work out really well. But usually if you have a very large audience, that tends to go well too. So again, pre-recorded is very good for doing short videos, and then the live stuff we've noticed has worked well with doing that kind of long-term engagement thing. But keep it going, keep it engaged, and that's what we've been successful so far.
Great. Well, thanks, Derek. And of course, I think we've got a couple of topics there we'll come back to in more of the open forum part. But now we're turning over to Paulette. The program that's currently going on at the Michigan Science Center is something they call Echo Live. It is now garnering national attention, a little bit different from maybe some of the stuff that we've talked about, primarily because it doesn't devote its time entirely to astronomy-based subjects, but does have an astronomy component during the week. So Paulette, if you can give us some insight into how Echo Live kind of came to be, why it's doing so well right now, and sort of how the future of Echo Live looks as the Science Center is preparing to reopen.
Yeah, definitely. So as Michael said, the Michigan Science Center does Echo Live, and there's actually a core team of about 3 of us that are working on that. So myself, I do most of the astronomy related ones, although you can see my setup today. Later on today, we'll be creating these little scribble bots. And because Anna is going to be on let's see if I can actually zoom in. Because I'm going to be on a or Anna's going to be on the news, I get to do the program. So I'm really excited to make these little guys with our audience. So most of the things that we do on Echo Live are actually ways that people can interact themselves. So whether we are doing a program like our liquid nitrogen program, where it's not something that they might be able to necessarily do at home, we try to really create time for interaction. So if you, our setup goes from Zoom through something called Caster, and then through Caster, we can post on both Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So we're going live through Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube all at the same time. And we actually are able to answer people's questions and have them answer our questions through all three platforms. And so we really try to encourage interaction. We've also been doing the Echo Live programs since, let's see, we were forced out of the museum on, let's see, it was March 24th, I think, was 23rd was our last day allowed inside of the Science Center, and we started Echo Live on the 24th. So the very next day, we had a virtual program already set. And so it was very easy for us to be able to just transition from the regular virtual program that we were doing to Echo Live. We do our programs every day at the same time. So we do weekdays at 2:30. That's really one thing that I like to push with social media is consistency. So you know what your audience is going to expect. They know what to expect from you, so they're going to tune in every day at the same time. Even for some of the other posts that people might do, it's also a really fantastic thing to stick with a normal time when you're going to be posting things on your social media. So, you know, we've mentioned things like Snapchat. We actually have used Snapchat at the Science Center, not as a way to reach our audiences, but Snapchat has these filters for like destinations or geo filters. And we created a geo filter for the Michigan Science Center. So when you go to the Michigan Science Center and you try to put a filter over your Snapchat, it comes up with a little plasma ball that says Michigan Science Center. And so that's when you are open, Snapchat's a great way to engage with your audiences because of those geo filters that you're able to use. We do post things on Instagram, Twitter, and we're actually not really focusing much on Twitter because we're finding that Twitter is not really the audience we're trying to attract. Families, for the most part, are families with young kids are really using Instagram and Facebook for the most part. So we do Instagram stories pretty much daily, and we post up to 3 times a day on Facebook. So essentially we'll do a normal post with like an image, and then we will post a video or something like that, and then we can or a teaser for the video that we're going to be doing later on in the day, and then we have Echo Live as well. And I can actually show us a little bit of insight into Facebook if I can go ahead and share my screen here. There we go. So this is actually the Michigan Science Center's page. So we do have a marketing team. It is a single person. And he's working on a lot of other things. So the social team has become myself, my colleague Anna, who does the other most of the other days. I do the space focused ones, she does the rest of them. And then our person who's in charge of like ticketing and admissions. So before we closed, we took a lot of pictures of things inside of the Science Center. So these are our celestial buddies. And we have them and we use them as demonstrations. They're really fantastic. Kids love them. And so we took pictures of these all over the Science Center, and we're finding that like things like celestial buddies or robots or things that are anthropomorphized bring us a lot more engagements and people reached. You can see that for our regular post, we've got our skeleton sitting at the desk. For our regular post, it does not reach nearly as many people as our videos, but up here we have our videos and we have our photos. If this remains a static thing, then people are just gonna be like, oh, you don't post anything on your page ever. So we try to get a rotation through the videos and get a rotation through our pictures as well. But when we get to our videos and our Echo Live program, this is the one that was posted yesterday, or that we did yesterday. This is our, we reached 3,309 people and had 737 engagements on something that we just did yesterday. Our other videos that we post get up to about 6,000 engagements, usually by the time that sort of slows down. And it's really great because we give people an opportunity and a place to be able to go every single day at 2:30 or weekdays at 2:30 and give them a way to learn more about a lot of different things. So right here, we actually start to bring in experts in the field. So we brought in someone from one of our the companies that actually donates to the Science Center called Exalta, and they make paint, specifically car paint, but they switched over to making hand sanitizer right now for people on the front lines. And so we were actually able to talk about how to make hand sanitizer at home, as well as how the manufacturing process works. He actually came to us live from the factory, which was really, really fascinating and really cool. So far, we've reached over 100,000 people with our Echo Live programs that we're doing. And so we've been doing this, like I said, since basically the very beginning. But for those of you that don't have your Facebook pages set up yet, you get all of this information and insights into how to make things look better. Facebook is actually really good about telling you how to like you can boost your posts, what's getting the most engagement, and it does help you a little bit, but Dan is right, they want you to spend money. So they do really want you to have ads, hence why we only post 2 to 3 times a day. If we used to post like 4 or 5 and nothing ever got actually like watched or engaged with. So yeah, so Echo Live has been really great for us at the Science Center. And like I said, it's also streamed to YouTube. And part of the reason that we streamed it to YouTube as well is because students might not have access to Facebook. So a lot of the students in the Detroit Public School Community District are actually using laptops and devices that were given to them by the school, and Facebook is blocked. And they can't install something like Zoom on it because they don't have access to installing anything. And so we have to also stream it to YouTube so that they're able to participate in the programming live at the same time. That's one of the things that we're actually pretty proud of being able to do, is both of those and get comments from both of them at the same time. Like I said, there's a team of 3 of us that work on our social media. And then so when Anna is doing a program, I'm there moderating the comments, pinning comments so she can answer them live instead of me getting the answer in the chat. She does the answer in the program itself. After the fact, we go back and answer all of the questions that may not have been answered in the program or might have been asked after the program is over. But we try to really drive that interaction with our programming and give it sort of a wow factor.
Very cool. All right, and then one of the things to consider, kind of going after all of this, kind of seeing the numbers of engagements and reach, what Dan was talking about with algorithms and things. It used to be that if you ran a Facebook page, you could expect to reach 20 to 40% of your followers in a given post. This was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And now the way that the algorithms are set, the number is now down to between 1 and 3%. So that if you have 100,000 people who are following you, you might only expect, maybe 1,000 to 5,000 people to see it without you then going and paying the money to Facebook to boost it to a certain group. What a paid post allows you to do, though, and this is where sort of the insight into your demographics is so important. A boosted post can give you very, very specific placement. If you want this to only go to mothers of young children, but those children have to be, say, under the age of 7, and the mothers need to be between the ages of 24 and 32, Facebook has mined enough information from everything that we've posted to know I can pinpoint that group for you to within 1 or 2% of the people that are on your group. And if you have something that is specifically for 18 to 25, you can then boost a post that would only go to people on Facebook who are your fans that are 18 to 25, or if you're willing to go beyond that, sort of anybody in your area who might come within 6 miles of your institution, and have all of these very, very specific things that was great when people were out and about, but are far less useful now when everyone's at home. And now you're trying to not pinpoint, but reach much larger swaths of people. So given that, thanks to Dan Paulette and Derek for giving us kind of the insight on those 3 specifics, kind of open it up now, whether it's through the chat or if you want to raise your hand in the participants window, kind of your own, as we're admitting more people, your own social media practices, what you've found has worked really well in these past couple of months. And then I think one of the first topics we're going to start with, both, it looks like Geoff Holt and Toshi have both mentioned captioning and live captioning in some cases being a requirement from some institutions for videos that they produce and that they are going to put out there. So Paulette, I'll let you go first, and then after that, Amy Gallagher.
Yeah, so a quick answer to Chris McCall's question of where we're streaming on YouTube and Facebook. As the moderator for it, we definitely have to follow 2 different chat threads. And so like, this is why I have 2 monitors, because I've got one going with Facebook, one with YouTube, and mute the one, and we can then pop questions into Zoom. So we actually technically have to do 3 different chat windows, but the moderator is still super important because we definitely have some kids asking some questions they really shouldn't be, or saying things that they shouldn't be as well. But I wanted to actually mention with the social medias, the demographics that you're trying to reach also vary by social media. So Facebook tends to be older millennials and older than that. Twitter tends to be just older than millennials, and then Instagram is the younger millennials and younger, like young adults and teenagers, Gen Z. So that's sort of how the platforms break down, which is why a lot of us are using Facebook and Instagram, because we're trying to hit all millennials. And for the most part, millennials have given up on Facebook. From what I hear, I watched a millennial panel. I still use both. But overall, they have mentioned that like they're giving up on Facebook and just using Instagram now. So using both allows you to get sort of the younger end of millennials as well as the older end.
All right, Amy Gallagher, go ahead.
Does anybody have an opinion on Facebook groups versus Facebook pages? When our planetarium's Facebook presence was originally started, it was started as a group. And we do have a page, but I've been posting almost exclusively to the group. I don't know if anybody has an opinion on one or the other.
Yeah, so I manage a lot of different groups and pages for different organizations, and groups are really good. What Mike was talking about, the 3%, the nice thing about groups is that it reaches everybody in your group. So for example, if you have a fan page or a fan group, let's say your planetarium is a fan group, you could conceivably subscribe to that, and everybody's going to get that information. So there's less constrictions on getting information out to your followers per se. But the problem with groups too is that then you have to either have to approve somebody to go in the group and not approve somebody to the group. The fan page though is a great way to just kind of post information and hope that it gets to somebody. So it seems to work. The groups seem to work better for smaller, less maybe 200 down. So there are some groups that I manage that are 14,000 people plus. Different astrophotography groups. There's one that's 64,000 people, and it gets really chaotic really fast, but it is doable. It is something that, and everybody gets that information. But the problem is now with Facebook is the algorithm is now determining what you're seeing. So I've been noticing, I don't know, have you been noticing that I'm having less engagement even in my personal page because not everybody sees my posts. So what's happening is that when you're part of different groups and pages, people are going to, they're going to prioritize what groups you see versus others. So even my groups that I'm even part of, I don't see everything. So unfortunately, it's not as clean as clean of an answer. But I think if you have a membership, maybe like a hey, join our Facebook group for up-to-date information, things like that. That might be a great way to manage it. But a fan page I think will reach a much larger audience, but so both have their advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, and so for groups, that's when you really want to have a discussion around like a certain topic. So we post in Dome Dialogues as a group, and we have sort of that discussion around topics. And pages are where you just want to get information out there. So it's a great landing point and a way that that you can get information out. And that's actually what I would suggest over a group, because then people actually have to join you and be part of the group, where a fan page, they can just like your page and see the information that you're sending out.
There is one major detriment to a group that you don't necessarily have with a page, and it's something that I run into occasionally in facilitating Dome Dialogues, is that everything that I do in Dome Dialogues is as myself. There is no Dome Dialogues profile that I can use Facebook as. So when I post something, if I wanted to post something that was from all of the administrators, we wanted to do something that was sort of, this is an institutional thing, it still has to come from me. And that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It's just sometimes maybe it's a little uncomfortable posting from your own thing, or all of these events are, were created by Michael McConville. It's like, no, I'm just the guy who's creating the event page. When you have a page that is putting the emphasis away from the individual and on the entity, so that I can interact with the page as myself, as Michael, or if I was, say, at the Planetarium with Derek, I could interact as the Planetarium to my audiences. And that way you can be a little bit broader. You can have, it's a little bit more of a consistent brand than just here are the individuals. I don't know who Michael or Derek or Justin are, but I do know the Bueller Planetarium because I'm on that page. And they may get to know you, and that's fine, but not having a singular page administrator or single page entity that you get to work as can be a problem sometimes, especially if you're in a situation like we had with the post yesterday, where you want to remain as anonymous as possible. Some planetariums are very personality driven, as Derek and I know very, very well. And other times there's a huge contingent of staff, and you don't want one or two staff members to sort of monopolize the posting, and having a page where you have this sort of anonymous group avatar works out a little bit better. Derek, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add to you, Mike, because you know very well with some of our groups that are some of our fan pages that we used to manage back together. One of the things that you want to be very aware of is in Facebook, if you're using the mobile app, sometimes you'll comment as the page. So for example, we've had instances where people have commented political nasty things coming as the organization. and it comes off very aggressive. And I've had multiple, all of a sudden I'm driving somewhere, I get a message from somebody saying, how dare you say this? And all of a sudden I'm like, what is going on? And I finally figured out that this one individual was posting all this horrible political junk and not realizing that they're actually posting and commenting it as the page. So that's something that's very, very important to aware of, is that if you do set up a social media administration or moderators or editors or however you want to do it, make sure that you know that these people are competent in knowing that if they are going to comment on something, make sure that they're always aware of who they're commenting as, because that can be very, very bad for your organization.
From the chat, Sarah from the Bell Museum up in Minnesota was talking about Twitch. For those of you who aren't familiar, Twitch is a live streaming platform that was designed originally for game streaming. So you watch people game or sort of esports and things like that. That has progressed into being one of the more consistent live streaming sites on the internet. So while the reach might not be as big as a YouTube or a Facebook, the demographics of people that go on Twitch might very well be the sort of demographics that you'd want to work towards. So if you have something that might be older Gen Z, whatever the group is after, like 16 to 35, let's just use numbers. From 16 to 35, Twitch is extremely popular because the majority of the Twitch content creators are also going to be within that age range. And so one of the things we're seeing is that you want an idea of where demographics are, watch where politicians spend money. If you want to deal with older Americans, you spend a lot of money on Facebook. If you wanted to get sort of the intellectual, you might go on Twitter. Or if you want to grab everybody wants to watch a video on YouTube, you might spend your money there. Twitch would be an opportunity for, say, example, if you wanted to do something that was more like a, say nightlife, and you put it online, that might be something where Twitch would be a great opportunity and platform for that. While it might not be as good to do maybe 18 plus sort of stuff on Facebook, where either a certain older group or a certain younger group may have access to that. So yeah, Twitch and sites like that give you the opportunity to live stream to demographics that may not necessarily be as strong on other platforms. And so we've got tons and tons of stuff going on in the chat. TikTok. Can anybody tell us? Okay, I guess we're going to go. Paulette is going to tell us about TikTok. Take it away.
So TikTok is very, very popular with Gen Z and sort of younger millennials. And it is, all right, I'm just going to try and get a gauge on my audience. Have you guys heard of, what was it? Never mind, I can't even remember the name of it. But what was that? Vine. Has anyone in the audience heard of Vine? No, okay. So TikTok is a way to put together sort of short videos that are viral videos, but not necessarily viral in that case, but putting together something that's kind of goofy and wacky, has music associated with it, has like stamps that go on the front of it, and just a way to get little snippets of information out there very quickly. And it is used by places like the World Health Organization. They are actually putting out TikToks. Vine you weren't able to add the music and stuff like that, so they're similar, but they're different right now. But it we've actually thought about putting together a TikTok page for when we come back from being closed, when we're trying to target more of the young adults, trying to get people into the Science Center that might be a little bit of less of at-risk populations, trying to get them in and excited about some of the things we are doing, like laser shows, etc. But that is definitely the demographic that you reach with that one is Gen Z and younger millennials. They're really funny and fun to watch, but we have not actually created them ourselves.
Derek, is your hand up?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
So I have a couple of friends of mine that are YouTubers using TikTok, and a friend of mine went from 1 to 900,000 subscribers in a month on TikTok, just going viral on a video. And it was, you know what the video was? It was just him false hunting, finding a shark tooth. And so find something. And I've been talking to him lately about, we want to set up our own TikTok page. We have our puppet that we want to unveil soon that we're going to utilize on TikTok. And me and Justin have astronaut costumes and thinking about doing some funny videos with that. But think about what, TikTok is very short videos. What's the message? That's basically what he told me, is that, 30 seconds or shorter for most videos is really attention span of most people. So think about what can you convey in a video that's 30 seconds, and that's very digestible. A lot of people like that. Also, I was a speaker for Pakachaka, which is if you ever get a chance to speak at a Pakachaka, I recommend you do it, because Pakachaka is all about basically a slideshow in 6 minutes. You only have 30 seconds each slide, and it goes automatically. And essentially, if you're not able to do that, this really helped me in my ability to communicate things. What's the point of the message instead of going on and on forever? So long story short, 30 seconds or less, what can you convey? And that's essentially what TikTok's all about. And doing it in a fun, interactive way creates creativity. And definitely, as Paulette mentioned, it is huge with Gen Zers. And as I said, you can get a following real fast on TikTok. So that might be something that some of you might consider doing.
All right, so two things in the chat from Chris McCall. First is there a concern with TikTok as a tie to Chinese surveillance? Not officially, but it is a Chinese company. So that would be up to your institution as to whether or not you feel comfortable utilizing TikTok as a platform. Jim Bader, if anything, grab your institution's handles, social media handles, on anything new that comes out. So whether it's TikTok, or if you don't yet have an Instagram or a Snapchat, if you yourself are not in charge of that, talk to your marketing department. And if they haven't, do go ahead and try to get your own consistent branding. I'm thinking if it's Adler, for example, Adler Planet, you'd like to have Adler Planet be everything that you do on social media, rather than it's Adler Planet on one, or in our case, when we were trying to do this 7-8 years ago at the Planetarium, it was Seminole Planet for everything, rather than Seminole Planet on Facebook and Bueller Planetarium on Twitter and the Planetarium at Seminole State on YouTube, when we could just say, look, all of these icons, this is where you go, at Seminole Planet, and it's going to work. And that kind of helped build the foundation of our social media presence. And Mike Smail, that's exactly how they do it at Adler. So yay. Anybody else who wants to share sort of their stories, best practices, things that you've run into, or if you've actually used TikTok? Amy said her daughter spends a lot of time on TikTok. So TikTok feels like a Derek Demeter social media site, though. Really, really got to say that. Noreen, what do you do in a live program if a troll or person with bad intentions makes bad comments on these platforms? So if anyone is able or wants to speak to this, we do have a little bit of time left here in the segment. We'd absolutely be able to open that up.
I thought I'd throw something out there of, in general, social media advice is not to delete comments that disagree with you, because it makes it look like you are very authoritarian in running your page. But yeah, outright trolling, you have no need to endure. So just delete and block and don't engage. Yeah. And again, that's where the moderation comes in key for live events. There's no reason to actually engage with trolls. All they're looking for is attention, or to disrupt what you're trying to do. So moderate, delete, and block. But if someone does have like a legitimate disagreement, you want to try and address that publicly and equitably and fairly.
This is Mike at Liberty Science Center. We're doing a 1 o'clock Facebook show every Thursday. And we do have someone from our marketing department, as well as the other planetarium educator, Andrew or me, monitoring the feed as the other one of us planetarium staff gives the program using Digistar content. Yeah, we had a whole big debate over our Pluto show last week about unfair to Pluto, but we did keep it going because it did kind of keep the controversy and interest level going. But if something's trolling, then we have Jeremy and our staff to deal with that very quickly. I'll in the chat, I'll post the link to our Liberty Science Center in the house. We have both planetarium, but also other science demonstrations, live from surgery and so forth. 3 programs a week going out.
Well, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. And one of the chat from Levent, where websites fall in all this, sort of the end all be all. In a lot of ways, we can think of social media as sort of being a gateway to more information, rather than, if we can get people to websites, then they're probably a little bit more willing to work through links and discover other aspects of the facility. This would probably be the best thing with a calendar. So it's fairly, one of the issues we run into is we've got 2 or 3 events in a week, is trying to put that all into one Facebook post and hope that everybody sees it, as opposed to you can go to a calendar and you could see out as far as you want and anticipate those certain things. And that each week you can do sort of an individual post that'll point people towards something that you think is most important, or sort of the event that you'd like to pinpoint the most. Paulette, go ahead.
So another quick tip, if you are posting something that is like current events in the news, something that's happening right now, do that. Definitely post things about rocket launches and anything that is current that people are going to sort of relate to. But always, always, always bring it back to your institution. When you just start posting articles from the New York Times or wherever you're, space.com, wherever you're getting articles, you're saying that they are the place to go for news and information, and you want to be that place to go for news and information. So always bring it back to your institution, whether it's, when people are able to come into my institution and learn more about this in the planetarium, or you can learn more here on the website, or here's more information along these same lines on your website. But always, always, always make sure to bring it back to your own institution, because otherwise you're losing a lot of your own sort of the fact that you guys want to be the place that people go for news and information.
E-Man, go ahead.
Kind of add to Paulette, what she's saying is getting everybody to come back to you. Obviously, those that know me well enough know I do astrophotography, but obviously we enjoy seeing people's photos. So, for example, the moon is a good one. I'll do a post of the moon and say, hey, show us your moon photo, and we'll make you the astrophotographer of the week on our Instagram, and we'll mention you. That's another thing that works really powerful on Instagram, is tagging people. Hey, want to shout out to this person for posting this, and then that person then will get that information, including all their friends. So tagging people also and featuring people on your social media is really good. Your fans. Also giveaways too. Obviously, it's not going to really work out really well right now, but when our institutions start to open and we kind of get more normal, doing giveaways, saying, hey, we have a swag bag. If you, trivia question, or, if you send us a picture of the moon or the Venus, even if it's just a smartphone picture of Venus in the sky, and whatever, we'll mention you, we'll give away something. Just ways to engage your audience and have them say, hey, if you share this, we have an event coming up in a week. If you share this, and if we get 1,000 or 100 shares, then we'll give away, some stuff or whatever. There are different ways that you can tailor it to make it fun and engaging for your audience and get the word spread out. The last thing I want to mention is one of our biggest things that we get a lot of likes on and engagement and shares are memes. People love memes, but of course you got to keep it, fresh. You got to keep it appropriate. No, silliness, but there are a lot of fun science memes that are good for families, good for all ages, but people love that stuff, and it will spread like wildfire. So that's another thing that's important, that what Dan mentioned earlier is sharing. People, if they share, that's going to reach more people, and people love memes. I can tell you that right now. So I'm part of a couple of meme Facebook groups, and that's just People just love these memes, especially in a time of quarantine.
I mean, we all want to chuckle. That's kind of the idea. Since we do sort of have a little padding today, we're we're usually right on time with things, but there's such a flow of comments and ideas that we're probably going to extend this segment just a little bit. We will meme tutorials are only at hospitality suites, Jim. And you've probably seen a couple of the memes behind me in the hospitality suite that I will not show on an e-conference. Levent was talking about SEO. For those of you not aware, this is search engine optimization. It is a service. You can do it yourself, or you can have agencies do it for you, that is essentially promised to get your web pages a higher ranking in the Google or Bing or Yahoo algorithms. Many times, this is important if you're in a very, very dense industry. Google algorithms work really well regionally. So say you're the only planetarium in a city, if somebody types in planetarium in the Orlando city limits, Derek's planetarium is almost certainly the one that's going to pop up. And you can check that around the country. It's almost always the case because you'll see a little map that pops up to the side. If you're in San Francisco, for example, where there is a higher concentration of planetariums, then of course you do have marketing departments that might be able to optimize that. But for the most part, it would be a lesser return on investment in sort of the general planetarium sense than unless you're in a very, very specific either location or environment where something like that would be a little bit more useful. Let's see. Naomi from Denver talking about a queue where they're planning things out at least 3 weeks in advance. So if you have the ability to both set up social media posts in advance, which you can do in some cases if you have the right plugins or aggregators for your social media groups, you can do that for Facebook, for Twitter, for Instagram. But like Derek said, you could also have something where somebody goes out and say, do this. Go out, look at that star. That's Venus. Take a picture, send it to us, and we'll showcase it. So now not only have they got something to do, they've got a keepsake at the end of it. And now we've educated the public to do something that they didn't think they were going to be able to do before. And that's pretty awesome. Anybody, Paulette, I'll let you go there.
Okay, so I do have one quick thing to add about safety and social media safety, especially after the post that we had on Dome Dialogues yesterday. Don't tag someone unless you ask them if it's okay. Because, for example, my social media is locked down. You cannot find me unless you're friends with my friends, and even at that, you can see barely anything, mostly because we've had issues in the past with stalkers, with people contacting us, and so it is a way at our institution. We've actually kind of made it a point to not tag any of our staff in anything that we do. And that's another quick thing with Amy. You were saying that you're posting on a group. We wouldn't be able to do that because we're very careful about keeping our personal social media personal, and our institution's social media are institutions. And so always ask before you tag someone on any social media, because you never know if what could happen if, for example, they have somebody who is stalking them or whatever. We've had to walk people out of the Science Center for some of our staff because they were able to be found via Facebook.
Yeah, it's one of the things where we get this question quite a bit, is why Dome Dialogues doesn't allow any sharing of posts. And it's because as a private group, it was intended always to be a place where once you were in, yes, people can see that you are a member of the group, but they cannot see anything that you've posted. And the whole idea was to be able to have open and real conversations without, friends or family or other coworkers maybe that can just drop in and see what you're doing, rather than let's just have open and real conversations where we don't have the public coming in and trying to investigate what we're doing, or anybody has access to those posts. So that's the main reason why we don't share. Private group, trying to maintain privacy as much as possible, so that if someone is tagged in Dome Dialogues, they're only tagged in Dome Dialogues and not in the external part of Facebook, so that we keep that as a lockdown as possible. So
real quick, so yeah, about the tagging people, definitely it works a little bit harder on Facebook, but yes, definitely message them if you can. Say, hey, we would like to select you. Instagram is a little easier because a lot of times there's more anonymity with Instagram. No, you don't think so? Paulette doesn't agree with anything I say. So.
No. It's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, even. You have to be really careful about who you tag and when. Anna and I have both had some bad experiences around the solar eclipse, and so just say there is a little more anonymity, but still ask. Always ask for consent first.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, of course, if people are sending you and also we usually have people have them send us in a message opposed to sharing it on the page. We get a lot of people send private messages and say, hey, I would like to feature my photo on the page. So that's kind of a consent anyways. So that's another thing you could do, is you could have them private message you and say, hey, because that's what I usually do when I want to get people to share my astro photos. I'll send them a message saying, here, please, would you mind sharing me this photo? Here's the information. So that's a great way to consent, instead of just somebody just dumping it on your comments as well. So
the key here, like in real life, no means no until they tell you yes. So just remember that. So we'll end our discussion of social media with a reminder that consent is important. So if there are any more questions, feel free to move that to Dome Dialogues, open up a new thread. Feel free to do that. And of course, we'll compile this as much as we can with the chat and posting that online, both for the YouTube stream and on the archives for that. So now we get to move on to our next recurring segments. And so this time we get to turn it right over to Anna Green for the next segment of Long German Words of the Week. So ladies and gentlemen, Anna Green.
Woo. Okay, so this week we have three, I guess, more towards our profession appropriate words, maybe not quite as long as we've come to know and love from previous Long German Words of the Week, but we'll see what you think. So if you haven't played the game with us before, if this is your first time, Long German Words of the Week, basically I will give you a long German word and then you will get two choices and you have to decide, is it choice A or choice B? Is that what the word means? And then we'll break the word down after everybody's voted. And there's a poll, so we'll actually do real-time voting. So our first word this week, Michael, if you could pop that up for me, thank you, is die Erdumlaufbahn. Die Erdumlaufbahn. So is that the Earth's ozone layer, or is that Earth's orbit? Well, this is fun. I've never gotten to see the real-time tracking before. All right.
Looks like we're pretty solid there. Yeah. So you're looking right about 72% of you say the Earth's orbit, 28% say the Earth's ozone layer. Anna, what is the correct answer?
So as you probably guessed, Erde is Earth. And then Bahn can mean train or railroad, but in this case, it means orbit. And so the Erdumlaufbahn is Earth's orbit.
All right. So we are ready for question 2.
Yep.
Here we go.
All right, so word 2 is das Satellitenkommunikationsunternehmen. Das Satellitenkommunikationsunternehmen. So is that either A, satellite constellation for communication, or is that the satellite communication company?
I'm thinking it has something to do with satellites and communication.
Yeah.
What I can pick up from this.
Yeah, this is one of those beautiful words that has lots of cognates in it. So one of the rules I was taught when I was learning German in college in first beginning, they said, if it's a word in English that has a C in it, just change the C to a K. And that works 95% of the time. So both of these words this week were pulled from articles about Elon Musk's Starlink satellites. So these first 2 words came from that. I felt that was pretty topical.
All right, looks like we've got almost everybody in. Roughly 60% say satellite constellation for communication. The other 40% say satellite communication company. Anna, what is the correct answer?
So as you all probably figured out, Satellitenkommunikations is the satellite communication, and then Unternehmen is the company. So it is the satellite communication company.
There we go. All right, and then last but not least, question number 3, which is a special word this week in that it is hyphenated, which always makes it better. So here we go, question number 3.
All right, so word number 3 is die Kraftfahrzeughaftpflichtversicherung. Die Kraftfahrzeughaftpflichtversicherung. So is that third-party insurance for an automobile, or is that the rules for the German equivalent of the Pinewood Derby?
From the peanut gallery, Mike Smail says, it's bad when John Elvert says, what? Every week, though, from its humble beginnings of this would just be fun for a week. And now we're a month in and it's like, oh, this is what we're all anticipating every Wednesday. So with almost all of the votes in, about 2/3 of our audience says rules for the German equivalent of the Pinewood Derby. The other third say third-party insurance for an automobile. Anna, what is the correct answer?
So Kraftfahrzeug would be automobile. And just for fun, Fahr is drive and Zeug is thing. So it's drive thing. And then Haftpflichtversicherung is insurance. So it's the third-party insurance for an automobile.
Okay. All
and
right.
that is, you would think that that would be something that you wouldn't need on a regular basis, but oh no, this word is constantly used. They do abbreviate often the first part. So Kraftfahrzeug usually gets abbreviated down to KFC and then hyphen and then the rest of it.
Okay.
So fun times with the German language.
There we go. So with that, do we have anyone that got all 3 correct this week? Okay, Leota, Joanne, John, excellent. Oh, Carol, great. It's like all the hands go, everybody's so excited about it. So that is, of course, I think our 5th. This is the 4th or the 5th long German words of the week. So Anna, thank you so much as always.
You're welcome.
And
Scott, Kraft typically means like power or like strong strength, like power. So
or Kernkraft. Kernkraft. Atomic energy.
Yeah.
So then what would be the American translation for craft work?
Like the power, I'm sorry. I haven't been sleeping well and I can't speak my native language, apparently. I can't think of the word in English.
She's gone full German.
That would be nice. That would be No, I just missed vocabulary, period. There's a hole in my brain where it used to be.
Steve Crawford says power plant.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Steve's saving us from Kalamazoo. So well done. Well done.
Oh, man.
Well, as always, Anna, thank you so much for the Long German Words of the Week. And that means that we get to move on to a brand new segment that we hope you're all going to enjoy. You thought one Holt was good, but you know what's better than one Holt? Two Holts. So everybody, this is Astronomy Apps for your at-home audiences with Geoff Holt. Geoff, take it away.
I'll try not to cancel it out to make it a 0. Try to do a +1. Total credit to Michael for the beautiful alliteration in the title. But let's begin our foray into the forays. So I had 2 motivations for starting this segment. One was that I have some apps that I like that I recommend to the people that borrow our telescopes. We have a telescope loan program, but I also wanted to hear from other people. And so I've got a few apps that I want to share over the next few segments. And then mine will probably come from a little bit more of an iOS Mac platform. And so passing it on to somebody else will help us to reach more people that maybe have some apps that are only available on Android or Windows platforms as well. So I'm going to paste into the chat a link for my app for this week. It's called Sky Safari. And I see some people nodding their heads. They already know it. I'm going to share my screen, take you to that website. So Sky Safari, actually from the same company that offers Starry Night Pro, which I've always enjoyed. It comes in 3 levels, and I'm going to be highlighting mostly the mobile version of these apps, but there is a Mac version as well. The $3 version is the one that I recommend to the people that pick up our telescopes the most. And it has a lot of solid functions, and I'll be showing off some of those. But I also have Sky Safari 6 Plus that I've been enjoying more lately. And I haven't figured out any reason why I would recommend the $40 Pro version. So if anybody else has ways that has helped you out, let me know. On this page, you can see a full feature by feature comparison of what's included in each of those versions. I'm not going to go over that, but I just want to show you that it's there. I'm going to stop sharing this and go straight over to my iPad. Oh, by the way, I am so bad at the long German words that I was hedging my bet this time, and I was actually voting both on my Mac and on my iPad. So I got them both all correct and all wrong because I selected both answers for each one. So just give me a moment to mute myself and make sure that I'm not getting the echo.
Also, Geoff, you just activated my smart speaker.
All right, let's see if I did it. Can you hear me? Okay, good. And we're not getting an echo, right? What did I say to activate your smart speaker?
Echo.
Sorry. All right, I'll share my screen. All right, first of all, this is the $3 version. And just like most of the apps that are out there. It has the general functions of being able to simulate the night sky. It also has the typical, I'm going to tap the compass button down at the bottom. The typical function where you can aim it up in the sky and it shows you what you're looking at. And so I found people give us good feedback about the fact that apps like this do help them to find things in the sky that they're going to aim their telescope at. This also has the AR that overlays your camera view onto the constellation information that you're seeing, although it doesn't seem to be happening this time. Let me hit the compass again and AR. There we go. I've got a plain enough ceiling and wall here that you can see the overlap a little bit. And then as soon as you start moving it around with your fingers again, it goes out of that compass mode. A couple of things that I like for helping people to find things in the sky to aim a telescope at. There is this tonight function here, which is just a quick view of what time planets are rising and setting. Also includes ISS and Hubble. We don't really see much of Hubble in Madison, too far north. It also has a calendar function here that brings up events and describes what the event might be that would be worth observing. And then if you tap the view button, it takes you to that setting. Another function that I use a lot for pointing out things that they would want to point their telescope at. The tonight's best function gives suggestions for things that you might want to observe. It is throughout the entire night though, and most of the people that are borrowing our beginner telescopes are not interested in staying up all night. So it can be a little overwhelming. Often I'll use this search function to go into like Messier objects and the like small view of something like M13 is a good way to kind of communicate that you're looking for a little fuzzy ball when you're trying to aim the telescope at M13. But then if you tap into it, you get a larger photograph, you get more information about it. Now, if I highlight Polaris there, and I go down and I hit the selection button down at the bottom, in the $3 version, you get object info, which I just showed you, and you can center on that object. But all of these functions that you see here on the $3 version are in the $15 version as well. But I'll show you some other options you get in the $15 version. Oh, by the way, the green dots you see here are satellites. You can turn on the satellites for both versions. The $15 version just gives you more satellites. But I've got Jupiter selected in this $15 version. And now if I hit the selection button down at the bottom, you can see that not only do I have the object info, which I'm going to show you a little bit more information. In the $15 version, you get pronunciations.
Jupiter.
Did you guys hear that? Okay, thank you, Paulette. You also have an audio tour button here.
Jupiter is the king of the planets, the largest of the worlds that circle the sun.
So it's got a nice narration to go along with it if people are interested. So you got that in the object info window. Back to the selection button again. You can center on the object just like in the $3 version, but you can also graph it. And that shows when the object would be at its highest point. You can drag here to find out like what time that would be. Also always shows the sun and the moon. Oh, so just to be clear, that was like altitude in the sky on the vertical axis and time on the horizontal axis. And then other functions that you have here, you can orbit the object. So you can't do this in the $3 version, but in the $15 version, you can actually travel to that object. And it actually works for anything in the solar system and stars basically in the solar neighborhood. And of course, you can change the perspective, zoom out to the point where you can see all of the Galilean moons, and so on. Then just tap the little Earth icon just above the time window that you're seeing there to get you back to where you started. And then one more feature that I want to show that I'm going to need to go a little bit darker for. So we've got some stars showing here, is an in-app purchase. It's an HR diagram. Now you can, I'm going to turn it on. And then if you look on the x-axis and the y-axis, you can see that you can change it between color, temperature, or spectrum for the x-axis, absolute magnitude, visual magnitude, or luminosity on the y-axis. And you can just tap on a star and it'll show you where it is on the HR diagram. Or as you are zooming in and changing your perspective, you can see that it does a live update on the HR diagram. And as you zoom in, you see that you're seeing more and more of the dimmer stars and able to go below the main sequence. Well, anyway, this is, just the quick version of a review of this software. Like it a lot. And the Mac version, the desktop version, I like. I wouldn't necessarily, recommend it to everybody instead of Stellarium, but it's great for like researching things, preparing for a planetarium program, something like that. Any questions before I stop sharing my iPad screen?
Not seeing any currently, Geoff, but I think we're great. That was fantastic exploration of the app.
All
and
right.
Excellent use of the dual screens, we got to say.
All right, thanks.
All right, so now that we've got our first ever Astronomy Apps for you at home audiences in the books, that of course means that we get to add brand new segment. This works really well, but also we're going to try something for the first time because we're going to go from one Holt to the next. But before we do that, you need to So we finally got music to play during one of these segments. So without further ado, Pandemic Primo Podcast Party for your Planetarian. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Holt.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Mary Holt. If you don't know me already, hopefully you do by now. Let me share my screen. We are somehow already at, oh, somebody else is sharing their screen still? According to this? Oh, there we go. Okay. Somehow we are already at episode 6 of PFP. How did this happen? How did we get here? Who knows? We've been home for so long, it feels like. But today, this episode, well, if you haven't seen one of these before, it's just where I tell you about podcasts that I think are really awesome, since we're most, if not all of us, stuck at home all the time right now. It's nice to have something to listen to, astronomy related or not. And a lot of them are not astronomy related. I like to give my brain a break from work related things sometimes. But today it is a more serious topic that I think is very, very important. And I felt I needed to address at some point. But so today's episode is brought to you by Fighting the Power and Smashing the Patriarchy, as I like to call it. And of course, as always, it's brought to you by Squarespace. But today I will be sharing with you some podcasts that I find helpful for myself, just to educate myself in terms of feminism and topics around race and culture and stuff in the United States, especially. I'm going to give you a highlight of a few of those today. So the first big one that I've been listening to for a long time is Code Switch, which is from NPR. And it specifically is talking about race in trying to think if they do much outside of the United States. I think it's mostly in the United States, but they sometimes touch on topics outside as well. But just how it, as it says here, impacts all different parts of our society, and it's very well researched, and this is all journalism from very smart people talking about these topics, and it's very interesting too, and the hosts are very charismatic and fun to listen to. Another one that I have not yet started, but I just added yesterday, this is a recommendation from my sister, who I often go to her because she's way more knowledgeable on these topics than I could even ever hope to be. But she recommended Movement Memos, which is all about activism and current topics around that. So I'm going to be listening to that soon. And one of my favorites, it's a little way more lighthearted than, I mean, Code Switch can be lighthearted, but way more lighthearted and less serious than a lot of the other ones, is Yo, Is This Racist? These are not journalists. These are not people that are researching anything. These are two comedians that take phone calls from people asking whether or not X, Y, or Z is racist. And then they attempt to answer the question sometimes, or they just talk about stuff related to what the caller said and make fun of the caller for talking too long and stuff like that. And it's very funny. And they always have a guest on that is usually another comedian as well. It's very, very fun. And this one, I actually do need to catch up on this podcast as well. This is more of a history-based podcast that's all about the history of the Civil War, but kind of taking a different angle of talking about things that often aren't talked about in a lot of our history books historically. And this was started also with a couple of years ago with the angle of how the country feels very divided. And it's like, well, country's always been pretty divided, and let's talk about how in a historical context. And then on the feminism kind of angle, or fighting the patriarchy angle, one of my all-time favorite podcasts is Unladylike, where their theme is building empathy and what is it? There's like a tagline that I'm forgetting what it is now. I haven't listened to it. It's something along the lines of build empathy, get knowledge, fight the patriarchy, and see what happens when women break the rules, basically, is the synopsis of this podcast. And they have different guests on every time talking about particular topics. They also have a book, which is over here, which has wonderful illustrations as well. But if you're interested in not a podcast and just reading instead, it's called A Field Guide to Smashing the Patriarchy and Claiming Your Space. So if you're interested in that, that is their book as well. And then the last one I have is, unfortunately, has stopped. This only went on for a few seasons, but it was fantastic. I always listened to this podcast every single week when it came on. But this was from the New York Magazine, and they would have journalism and stories and interviews that were specifically focused on women and women in the workplace and stuff like that. So this is another one that I highly recommend. And if anybody has any suggestions, I was a little disappointed in myself that I didn't have more that fit this topic. So if anybody has any that you find helpful or would like to share, please let me know. But that is it for this week's PPP. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mary. And then we did have a request from the chat. If you could just post either a link to the slides or to the individual podcast for this week.
Yes, absolutely. Should I just just posting the title in the comments? Is that helpful, or? That should be
a good idea. Yeah, and we'll just take your slides and put them on the archives as well.
Okay, that sounds good.
Awesome. And so to finish this off this week, one of our favorite recurring segments, all the way from Chicago, Illinois, this is The Record Shop with Mike Smail.
Hey, everybody. Happy episode 6, Return of the Jedi, I believe is where we're up to in the series so far. What's, again, for any of you that may be new, we're going to talk about 3 different records that I've been listening to, things I enjoy, things I think you might enjoy. At the end of each one, we'll put a little bit of information in the chat about it, where you can go listen to it, where you can download it, purchase it, whatever strikes your fancy. And then at the end, we'll share a sort of a wrap-up image about the whole thing. So first record we have for today is a record. It's the first record by a New Jersey band called Vesudova. To fight the glare from my screen here, but the record is called Life in Cycles. And you can probably actually see just from me holding it up there, there's some constellation artwork on the cover, a nice little kind of celestial grid. Crack open the gatefold, you've got a nice sun image and a little spectral flare in there. Vesudova plays post-rock, which is basically instrumental rock and roll, guitar, bass, and drums, maybe some keyboards, but no vocals. And their stuff tends to be a little more upbeat, so it's not going to be real melancholy and chill like some of the records we've talked about in the past, but kind of fun, bouncy, easy to listen to. And actually, it might show up a little bit easier on the insert. You can see those the constellation grid a little bit better there. And this record came out, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, and I wasn't able to get a copy of the original pressing, but I had a copy of it on cassette tape that a buddy of mine, Brian's label, put out, and that was all I had. And then Vesudova released their new record 2 months ago, maybe. And I ordered it, and it turned out there's a label in downstate Illinois called Skeletal Lightning that has actually repressed all of their earlier records. So I was able to order, this is I think the third pressing of Life in Cycles. But it's also really cool because in addition to sounding cool, it also looks really cool. This is a tricolor LP. So you've got a semi-transparent purple, a semi-transparent green, and an opaque white. Catalog this and the fun things you can do with records these days. And actually, so Life in Cycles is their first record, but their newest record is called Generator, and it might look familiar to some of you as well, as I'm pretty sure this was the sound system of my very first Planetarian. It was something remarkably similar to this, if not maybe this exact make and model. All right, share the links. Vesudova, I think, yeah, they're based out of New Jersey. But currently putting out stuff on Skeletal Lightning. And there's a link where you can listen to. Oh yeah, they remastered Life in Cycles. They tweaked it a little bit for this new pressing, but more information about Vesudova there. Next up, we're going to stick with the V theme and talk about another record that might be familiar to some of you, and that is a record called Highlights of Vortex. Some of you are no doubt familiar with the Vortex musical art experiments that took place at the Morrison Planetarium in San Francisco. If not, they ran from 1957 to 1959. And this was where there was a local radio DJ and a musician, and they sort of got the okay to create these experiences in the original dome at the Morrison. And it's actually nice. This is so the original version of this LP came out in 1959. This is a repress that was put out a year or two back on Smithsonian Folkways, and it comes with a nice little recreation of the original newsprint booklet. And I just wanted to read the opening little bit of how they described Vortex, because I think it's going to sound familiar to most of you. Cataloged as entertainment for the space age. Amazing, said a member of the capacity audience. It's hypnotic, said another. Especially magnificent was the sense of space, limitless, incomprehensibly vast, and awe-inspiring in its implications. That was written by Alfred Frankenstein for the San Francisco Chronicle. And they were talking about Vortex, a new kind of theater without actors, script, or musicians, as presented in San Francisco's Morrison Planetarium. The music is what's called music concrete. So that's music that's not played via instruments, but taken via sound recordings, or you take existing sound clips and kind of dice them up, mix them around, and experiment with them. And then there were also a series of video projections set up using the system there at the Morrison. The name Vortex came from the ability they had. There's sort of a hand crank device that enabled them to send the sound system to the different speakers around the room. And something also that's kind of cool. So the repress was done 400 copies on real crystal clear vinyl. And if you look at the label on the B side, it's actually a representation of the sound system at the Morrison. So each of those little, think of that as your dome master. Each of the little white circles is a speaker cluster. with kind of a low frequency and then 2 high frequencies. And then there was kind of an ancillary sound system with 2 speakers in the pit in the center of the theater. And those were controllable separately. So they could create some really interesting experiments and experiences. The very first one of these they did, again, it was a kind of an art piece. It was kind of an experiment. The first one they did was free, and it was so popular they had to do multiple shows. It concerned the museum administration a little bit because of the number of bohemians, in their words, that showed up for the screening. So they then began charging tickets for the future screenings, and they ran, I think, 5 of them altogether between 1957 and 1959 before finally sort of being kind of forced out of the space. Any of you who were at the Dome Fest at IPS 2008 here in Chicago, you might remember Robin Sipp actually took a stab at, based on some sort of archival records, recreating. He made a full dome short of what the experiment might have looked like, what vortex might have been like, and played it there at that Dome Fest. I don't know if he still has that or if that lives on anywhere, but that's another little connection some of you may remember. This particular repressing is sold out, but there's still in the links there. You can listen to it on the Smithsonian Folkways site. If you also just look up on YouTube highlights of Vortex, there's just a 30-minute long file of the track. Note it's odd. It's a series of 4 and 5 minute tracks, but it takes some devoted listening. It's probably not something you're gonna put on in the background while you're trying to do work, but that's what makes art great. All right, and yeah, infinitely not danceable. Yes. Last but not least, final record for today is the newest record by a guy from my hometown, Columbus, Ohio. His name's Micah Schnabel, and his new record is called "The Teenage Years of the 21st Century." This is Micah is very much a singer-songwriter. He fronts a rock band called Two Cow Garage, and that's a guy I used to work with is the bass player for Two Cow Garage, so that's how I got turned on to them way back when. I mean, it's been 15 years since I lived in Ohio at this point, so it's been a while. But they tour around, and then Micah does his own singer-songwriter stuff too, and it's really fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. His voice, the way he sort of puts these experiences and these stories into song, is just fantastic. Like I said, I love him. Total homer choice here. This is just a record that I really like, and all of his records. He's had a couple records. His birthday is actually on Friday, and he's going to be doing a stream on his Facebook Live where he's going to play a song from each of his records. So again, that's Micah Schnabel. If you like what you hear, definitely check it out. Let me give you some link to his Bandcamp, and then we'll go ahead and switch over. Let me go ahead and put up the big wrap up image here. So yeah, our 3 for today: Basudova, Life in Cycles, some nice bouncy post-rock to get you moving, get you grooving away work today. Highlights of Vortex, more experimental planetarium-related work from the late 1950s. And then Micah Schnabel's The Teenage Years of the 21st Century, singer-songwriter, modern American folk, whatever you want to call it. That's what you're going to hear. So thank you, everybody. Again, I was going to, real quick here, I'm going to stop the share. The question came up for Mary about sharing out links to things. Again, these have all of this information we've been archiving in the Dome Dialogues Google group, which people have access to. I will real quick share just the direct link to where you can look back. You can see the notes from all of the records we've talked about over the weeks, as well as get the pictures and the links from there. So thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all next time.
Awesome. Well, as always, thank you, Mike, for that. Now we're in open forum. So if anybody has anything they'd like to share before we end this afternoon, that would be fantastic. And of course, always, because it's open forum, you're you're free to just kind of jump in as you see fit.
Don't forget tomorrow night, virtual hospitality suite trivia starting 8 o'clock Central.
Yeah, so join us for trivia in the hospitality suite. I did receive a message a while back from somebody who didn't want to ask the question themselves for obvious reasons, but sort of along the lines of turning the trolling question inward towards the planetarium. And they had a question as, does anyone have an idea of what you might do if someone in the industry is trolling you? And I wouldn't think this would be like outright sending of pictures of, things that they shouldn't. But assuming sort of like just maybe somebody who's got a vendetta against you. We don't want to go into too much detail if anybody's ever had that happen. But sort of any advice maybe on how to approach that or deal with that? A very unique question here at the end of the e-conference.
I think that a private conversation, because taking it offline and not getting them the attention online and having a private conversation with the person is probably a good way to at least start. And then getting more people involved if that private conversation does not yield results.
Yeah, roughly the same thing from Jim. Don't give them attention. That's why trollers troll. So yeah, anything to sort of diffuse that situation online and not give them the pleasure of watching you squirm or feel bad about it. Probably be a good thing. Anybody else before we had another question? Susan Button. Anybody heard of ozonation or ozone, using ozone to sanitize a planetarium? Susan, I'm assuming specifically a portable dome. Okay. So anybody with any experience on that?
Someone posted it on the Planetarium Network that they were going to use that as a means of cleaning in between classes. And I questioned what it was and got an answer that airplanes do this between flights to clean the airplane. So I'm looking for more information on that idea. Run across anything, let me know.
I just wanted, hi Susan, I just wanted to comment on that because we were thinking about something that we could use a cleaning gas, so we can enter it through the air vent of the mobile dome. So it's easier, but of course we have not tried anything yet, but that will be very fast because you get the group outside and then you just clean it from the outside without getting into the dome, which could be safer. Yeah, something like that may work, but you should have like a technical test to see if it actually can work while having that ozone or whatever you use blown into the dome, and then just wait 2 moments and then it could be safe to get in. Yeah, we will have to think of things like that.
Look for more of that for me if I find something out. The guy who's runs the Home Planetarium Association is actually trying to build something, a machine to do this. I looked online and I saw some machines, but they're very sketchy on how they work. I used to spray Lysol in my fan. If I had a sick child, then it would just go all over the whole dome, I don't know if it really worked or not, but it made me feel better. Anyway, thanks for your time.
I've seen a lot of those videos of them cleaning the aircraft to show like these are the measures that we're taking. And they spray it into the, and it looks like what the people who like spray to get rid of bugs for you. It looks like what they use for that. And then they spray it into the air, but they also specifically spray it on every surface. And then also they have someone going around and hand cleaning every single tray and every single touch point on the seats. So it seems to me that either they're covering their bets that it's not touching everything when they spray it, or they're just being extra careful. Either way, I think that's good. But
this ozonation is not a spray. It's using UV, some kind of UV light. So I'll try and find out more by Friday, maybe.
All right. Anyone else? Any other topics to discuss before we adjourn for this this conference? Great. Well, then we'll see. Hope to see everybody tomorrow night. 7 o'clock is the home studio. Eastern, 9 o'clock the hospitality suite with trivia, and then of course our reopening roundtable on Friday, the 15th of May at noon. But until then, everybody's unmuted. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you later this week. There we go.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.